The Taliban takeover and U.S. troop withdrawal from Afghanistan is having broad implications across the region, especially in neighboring Pakistan. The country's ambassador at the United Nations says Pakistan believes military intervention was never the answer, adding the international community needs to work together to secure peace in Afghanistan. So let's bring in Ambassador Dr. Asad Majeed Khan, Pakistan's ambassador to the U.S. Ambassador, Pakistan says that U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken called the country's foreign minister to discuss how to move forward in Afghanistan. How is Pakistan hoping to help in this conflict?
Well, thank you very much, Laura, for having me. And Pakistan has all along been supportive of the peace process. We played a key role in bringing Taliban to the table. And we have always believed, as our Prime Minister has said repeatedly, that there never was a military solution to this conflict. And as we speak, we are still all for an inclusive solution, an inclusive end state to the ongoing conflict in Afghanistan.
Regarding the Taliban, will Pakistan recognize the new Taliban government?
Well, I think we will. We've been working closely with the international community, including United States, and we will continue. We will follow the lead of the international community in seeing how the situation evolves in Afghanistan. The reports that we are getting from the ground indicate that so far, Taliban have listened to the international community. And I'm sure the international community will also hold them to the promises and commitments that they have been making through their declarations, both in the negotiation process and also through their other public declarations. So we are closely following the situation and certainly work with the international community, particularly the extended Troika, to get to the point where that recognition is needed or required.
All right, so what I'm hearing from you is it's to be determined if Pakistan will recognize the Taliban government based on how they proceed in the next few days and weeks, and if they create a peaceful situation in Afghanistan. Back in May, Pakistan has warned Americans it would not allow its bases to be used for military action against the Taliban as U.S. troops withdraw from the region. But how is the situation right now in Afghanistan complicating that relationship between Pakistan and the U.S.?
I think we have worked closely together. Secretary Blinken spoke to our foreign minister yesterday, and then both exchanged views on how our countries can continue to work together. Pakistan has itself been a victim of terrorism. You know, after Afghanistan, we are the one that has suffered the most. So we are obviously concerned by the developments in Afghanistan. And Pakistan has in the past been a close partner, counterterrorism partner for the United States and international community. So we certainly, and this was why we wanted to do whatever we can to support the peace process, because if the peace process unravels, it leads to basically the pockets and militias re-emerging in Afghanistan. That is, of course, a concern for Pakistan. And so far as bases is concerned, I think our Prime Minister has spoken very clearly that we would not allow our territory to be used for that purpose. But we are also committed and determined to not let our territory to be used by anyone. So far as CT is concerned, we have been supportive, we will continue to support, and there are other ways in which Pakistan can support the international community's CT effort. We have extended that support in the past, and we'll continue to do that in future also.
And Ambassador, we know that Pakistan borders Afghanistan to the east, to the south. It has served as a sanctuary for the Afghan Taliban for decades. The country was crucial to the extremist group's longevity and rise in power. Did the Taliban receive any assistance from Pakistan in its most recent offensive?
Laura, I think if you look at the way events are unfolding in Afghanistan, really, I think it's time also a moment for reflection and introspection because clearly, I think successive Afghan governments have used Pakistan both as an excuse and as an afterthought for basically covering up for their deficiencies. And really, I think Pakistan has been the diversion and unfortunately the scapegoat. And the way Afghan security forces have melted down, we had been hearing about 10,000 Taliban having crossed into, you look at what we have done on our side of the border, we have cleansed all the tribal areas where we were, people would say that they were safe havens. You go to the tribal areas of Pakistan today. We have built a fence covering the most treacherous border anywhere in the world. And that is no less than a miracle, with the objective of blocking the movement and to addressing those accusations. So really, I think Pakistan has a clean slate. We have consistently not just said this repeatedly, but we have walked the talk also in making sure that our territory is not used by anyone against anyone. And for that purpose, also, we were actively supporting the peace process. So, such allegations emerging out of Afghanistan by those elements that basically, had no other excuse or justification for their inaction. I think that needs to be taken with a pinch of salt. And frankly, I think it's about time also to dust up some of the cigar reports that have been pointing out to the corruption and some of the other shortcomings that those properly designed and framed investigations found over the years.
But it's undeniable that over the last few weeks and months, the Taliban has maintained its strength, if not gained strength, in order to, again, take over the country and Kabul. We know the U.S. refused to implement targeted sanctions against those in Pakistan who sponsored the Taliban. In your opinion, should the U.S. have done something differently? Should there have been targeted sanctions?
Sanctions, again, it's both sad and ironical, for anyone to speak about sanctions. I think, should Pakistan be sanctioned for all the support that we provided for the peace process, during all these years? Should Pakistan be provided for closing its border completely? And making sure that there are no safe havens? Should Pakistan be sanctioned for what we did in dismantling the Al-Qaeda from our part of the world, Should Pakistan be sanctioned for cleansing its own house completely, So I really think that and again, if you look at that hashtag that was created, most of that was actually bot activity, and a number of, or majority of those tweets originated, unfortunately, from India and Afghanistan. So clearly, that was more of an orchestrated campaign to basically malign and target Pakistan, and we have seen signs of that coming out in a number of other areas. I'm sure you are aware of the EU disinfo campaign, where Pakistan is being consistently targeted and maligned. So really, I think it's not a question of sanctioning, it's a question of working together. And we have clearly demonstrated our readiness. As we speak, we are working very closely with the international community to support the peace process. We are encouraging all Afghan parties to get to a common understanding, because we firmly believe that without there being representation from all ethnic groups and without there being an inclusive government and setup in Afghanistan, Laura, I don't think Afghanistan will ever get to see long-term sustainable peace. Afghanistan has seen, and I think people of Afghanistan owe it to you, and I think they also owe it to the international community. And they expect us to support them because they have seen so much conflict over the past 40 years. We are ready to step up to the plate and play our role in facilitating the peace process.
On that
And
point,
I'm sure.
On that point, Mr. Ambassador, I want to play a soundbite for you. Over the weekend, CBSN spoke to an Afghan interpreter whose family still lives in Afghanistan, and he's also a part of a group that accuses Pakistan of running a proxy war in Afghanistan. He organized protests outside the Pakistani embassy over the weekend. Let's hear what he has to say.
As an Afghan, I asked Pakistan to stop proxy war, but I think now it's kind of seems late because they got in there and now they will rule the country the way they want, and everyone is scared, so no one knows what will happen.
Do you believe it's too late for Pakistan to cut ties with the Taliban?
First of all, I think the word proxy is a misnomer here. Taliban, we may have connections and relationships because Pakistan has been home to over 4 million refugees now for 40 years, so those connections may be there, but they are not on our payrolls. They don't draw their salaries from Pakistan. They have their own independent mind. Most of them are already there in Afghanistan, and they were actually controlling a large part of Afghanistan even before the events of the past few weeks. So it's really, I think, as I said before, that unfortunately Pakistan has been a diversion and a scapegoat for so many years, despite what we have done in terms of extending hospitality, in terms of supporting the peace process. So our interest lies only and only in seeing a peaceful, stable Afghanistan where all Afghan parties are able to get to a common understanding. And our National Security Committee laid it out very clearly yesterday, Laura, calling for an inclusive end state, calling upon Afghan parties to get to a common understanding, to respect the rule of law, to respect human rights, to not let Afghanistan's territory be used against any other country. We have lived up to that commitment, and we expect and hope, and we will extend every facilitation, as we speak. Again, as I said before, I think what we are hearing from the ground is that Taliban seem to be listening to the international community. We are not seeing any influx of refugees on our border so far, which we are frankly fearing. Clearly, people are waiting to see how this situation evolves.
But on that last point, do you believe that if there is a sudden influx of refugees, that Pakistan is ready to help and able to help thousands of Afghan refugees crossing into the country?
Well, as we speak, right now, Pakistan is facilitating the evacuation of international NGOs. We are helping the media, your colleagues who are serving in Afghanistan. We are also, our embassy is working round the clock to issue visas to those Afghans who are willing and ready to come out. Pakistan has hosted and has been home to millions of Afghans for too long. And obviously our heart bleeds with our Afghan brothers. And we will do whatever we can to support that. But really, I think what we also need to understand is that Pakistan is a poor country. We have already borne the burden of refugees for too long, almost single-handedly. And that's why we want to see peace, so that, we don't have to face that. And I'm happy to share that, at least for now. We are not seeing the flood or influx of refugees, and we would hope to see that situation stay the same way. because and for that, I think we need to work with the Afghan parties, stakeholders. And let me also tell you that as Taliban were expanding their control in Kabul and Afghanistan, we had almost all major Afghan leaders in Islamabad. Even as we speak, they are in Islamabad. Pakistan really has consistently demonstrated that we don't have any favorites, and we are working with all Afghan parties, and we are working as hard as we can for an inclusive end state.
Well, we wish Pakistan success in being the mediator for all those parties. Us here in the U.S. and in Europe, in the Middle East, everyone hopes for peace. So I hope that you are right. Ambassador Dr. Asad Majeed Khan, thank you.
Thank you, Laura, for having me.